of America, if you saw those signs, they explicitly understood the connection between finance and the closing of the plant. And the workers simply said, this is not fair. We're, like you said, mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. And they took direct action. I think that's a healthy thing for our democracy.
Let me take it one step deeper, because workers and ordinary people were getting the shaft, as you say in your upcoming book, long before this meltdown. And here's the question that goes to whether or not we have a fair economic system. Some of the financial corporations and individuals at the center of this crisis over the years contributed big sums of money to both parties. AIG alone gave $1.5 million to the politicians just before it got $85 billion in loans from the government. Freddie Mac was already receiving federal funds as it was giving out in political contributions $500,000. Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to both political parties for their conventions this summer. Banks, hedge funds, investment companies gave millions. I mean, look, you spent your life exploring economic justice in this country. Would you say that the system is rigged so that advantage is always taken by the people at the top of our financial system, of those who are paying the bills?
I agree with you that our campaign financing and political financing system and the lobbying that takes place is a scandal, a shame, and it is a breach of the deepest trust of our democracy. Anyone who believes in the Jeffersonian ideal of a democracy in which we have transparency and we have accountability. The flood of money coming in has meant that we can't trust decisions. This is an indictment of the way business and politics are done, and it is a cause for a serious consideration of deep finance reform for our political activities.
Time magazine says this week that while no one is looking, Congress and the IRS have been quietly changing the tax code to lower corporate taxes for years to come. Are they receiving bailout money through the front door while they're getting tax breaks and other privileges through the back door?
That's a change which was done at the Department of Treasury without statutory authorization to do it.
They did it arbitrarily.
They did it on their own with no consultation with Congress to get permission for this change, since it was absolutely antithetical to the statutory requirement. And I've looked at the comments of tax specialists. I'm not a tax specialist, but the tax specialists say this is unheard of and clearly in violation of the statute, which protects the Treasury by not allowing banks that acquire failing banks to get the benefit of the losses of the failed bank and carry those losses over for the benefit of the acquiring bank. That's a big set of tax reductions. If you can acquire a Merrill Lynch and get their tax losses, that's going to mean that Bank of America pays less. If you can acquire Countrywide and get their tax losses, that is going to improve your position.
Are we chumps?
Well, you know, that is a word I shrink from, but if I had to answer in the colloquial, you betcha.
Watch this.
Mr. Kashkari, in the neighborhood I grew up in the inner city of Baltimore, one of the things that you tried to do was make sure that you were not considered a chump. And what chump meant was that you didn't want people to see you as just somebody they could get over on. And I'm just wondering how you feel about an AIG giving $503 million worth of bonuses out of one hand and accepting $154 billion from hard working taxpayers, because I'm trying to make sure you get it. I mean, and you know what really bothers me is because all these other people who are lined up, they say, well, is Kashkari a chump?
Those are harsh words, but in this case, I do believe advantage has been taken. And I'll leave it at that.
No, don't leave it at that. Because
no controls, no compliance requirements for the financial services industry for $350 billion. And so the fact this chump term suggests that we are being taken advantage of. We're being taken advantage of because even as taxpayers are being asked to pay more and more importantly, not this currently alive group of taxpayers, but our children and our grandchildren are being asked to commit to repaying ever larger amounts of money, even as our foreign creditors are closing in on us and saying, hold up, you're going to have to change your habits. We are not going to allow this to continue. We will not continue to subsidize this kind of profligate debt management.
What about this cover story on this current issue of the Atlantic? After the crash, China to the U.S., shape up or else. What's going on there?
What's going on is a change in the power relations, and we're seeing that the countries who have savings, like China, are now asserting themselves to tell us to reform our debt-dependent ways, both in the public sector and the private sector. They have been financing this. China is the largest purchaser of U.S. treasuries and other securities, government-related securities.
They're saying live within your means, right?
Live within your mean. Your credit line has been reduced.
You've been watching these hearings all fall. What's the picture that's emerging? What are you learning?
What I'm learning is that the highest officials in our land have proven to be less than capable in making decisions that affect the lives of so many Americans, that we've seen about faces, changes of strategy, no clear, coherent strategy for fixing a world-shattering crisis.
Are you saying they don't know what they're doing?
I'm saying if they know what they're doing, they're keeping it secret. In other words, for those of us looking from the outside, there is no coherent explanation, and the actions that have been taken are incoherent.
One of the surprises I've learned in watching the hearings is that even the agencies that gauge the credit ratings of these loans were in on the fix, right? I mean, they were being paid by the companies whose risks they were supposed to evaluate, and it turns out they let us down, right?
Oh, my God. That is the most critical. They're just a series of disasters. Let me just say, Fitch, Moody's, and Standard & Poor's, I saw that testimony. It made my heart ache to hear the head of these companies being confronted with internal memoranda and emails saying, we'll rate a cow, and they have no explanation